grabbed their attention immediately. A 17-year-old boy named Tommy lived high in the Rocky Mountains with his grandfather. He spent his days hunting, fishing, and exploring the wilderness. He wasn't connected to the outside world. He didn't know about social media drama or celebrity gossip. He knew about survival. He knew about nature. He knew about right and wrong. One morning, while hunting for elk, Tommy found something that should have terrified him. A man was tied to a tree, ropes binding his arms and legs, blood on his face, his motorcycle jacket torn and muddy. And the man wearing that jacket was a member of the Hells Angels motorcycle gang. Most people would have called the police and walked away. But Tommy didn't know how to use a phone. So instead, he did something that would expose a crime so serious that it would tear his small mountain town apart. He cut the man down. If you want to hear how this mountain boy's choice to show compassion to a dangerous outlaw became the story that changed everything about how his town saw justice, please smash that like button right now. And subscribe to this channel because we celebrate stories of ordinary people doing extraordinary things every single day. Let's go. Build the story slowly and clearly. The town of Silvermont, Colorado, was a small mountain community of about 4,000 people. It was the kind of place where neighbors knew each other, where people left their doors unlocked, where the biggest news of the year was usually who won the county fair pie contest. But like many small towns, Silvermont had a dark side. For the past 5 years, the Hells Angels motorcycle gang had been using the area around Silvermont as a base for their operations. They had a clubhouse about 8 miles outside of town, hidden in the forest. The police suspected they were involved in drug trafficking, but they couldn't prove it. Evidence kept disappearing. Witnesses wouldn't testify. Nobody wanted to be the person who spoke up against the Hells Angels. The town had learned, through hard experience, not to mess with them. The police chief, a man named Roy Henderson who'd been in law enforcement for 30 years, knew what was going on. He just felt powerless to stop it. The Hells Angels had money. They had connections. They had lawyers. And most importantly, they had the willingness to hurt people who got in their way. Several people in town had tried to stand up to them over the years. A shop owner who refused to pay protection money had his store burned down. A journalist who tried to investigate their operations had received death threats. A local councilman who proposed stricter enforcement had woken up to find his family dog hanging from a tree. The message was clear: don't mess with the Hells Angels. So most people in Silvermont just looked the other way. Then there was Tommy McKenzie. Tommy was 17 years old and had lived his entire life in a cabin in the mountains with his grandfather, Samuel McKenzie. Samuel had been a mountain man his whole life. He'd retreated to the mountains in 1975, right after getting back from the Vietnam War. He'd built a cabin with his own hands. He'd lived off the land. He'd raised his daughter, Tommy's mother, in that cabin. Tommy's mother had left the mountains when she was 18, desperate to escape what she saw as isolation. She'd moved to Denver. She'd gotten an education. She'd built a life. But when Tommy was born, she had problems: drug addiction, abusive relationships. She couldn't take care of him properly. So at 3 years old, Tommy had been brought to live with his grandfather in the mountains. Samuel had raised Tommy the same way he'd raised Tommy's mother. Tommy learned to hunt. Tommy learned to track animals by their footprints and droppings. Tommy learned to start fire without matches. Tommy learned to navigate by the stars. But there was something different about Tommy's upbringing compared to his mother's. His grandfather loved him unconditionally. His grandfather taught him that the world wasn't something to be afraid of, but rather something to be understood. His grandfather taught him that human beings, like animals, were often just acting out of fear or pain. That if you understood that fear or pain, you could often reach the better part of them. People are like mountain lions, Tommy, Samuel used to say. If they're attacking you, it's usually because they're scared or they're hurting. If you remember that, you can often find a way to solve the problem without more violence. Tommy had never been to school. He'd been homeschooled by his grandfather using old textbooks and reading. He'd never had a cell phone. He'd never been on the internet. He'd never even been to a movie theater or a fast food restaurant. Some people might have said Tommy was neglected, but Tommy's grandfather knew better. He was teaching Tommy something that was increasingly rare: how to think for himself, how to trust his own judgment, how to do what he believed was right, regardless of what society told him. On the morning that changed everything, Tommy had been out hunting since before dawn. He was tracking an elk that he'd been following for 2 days. He was about 4 miles from the cabin when he heard something out of place. A voice. "Help, please, help." Tommy froze. He'd heard animal sounds his whole life. Wounded deer, trapped rabbits, angry bears. But this was a human voice. He moved carefully toward the sound, the way his grandfather had taught him, staying downwind, staying quiet, observing before acting. That's when he saw the man. He was tied to a pine tree with thick rope. His leather Hell's Angels jacket was torn. His face was swollen and bloody from being beaten. One arm looked like it might be broken. The man was barely conscious. Tommy's first instinct was fear. His grandfather had taught him that the Hell's Angels were dangerous, that they didn't follow normal rules, that the police couldn't stop them. But his grandfather had also taught him something more important, that human life mattered. Tommy stepped out from the trees. "Hey," he called out. "Are you okay?" The man's eyes snapped open. He looked at Tommy, a teenage boy in hunting clothes, holding a rifle, and his expression was confused. "Kid," the man said, his voice hoarse. "Run. Get out of here. They'll hurt you too." "Who?" Tommy asked, approaching carefully. "The others." The man said, I was getting out. I was going to leave the club. Tell the police what I know." And they found out. They did this. They said they'd be back. They said they'd make sure I never talk. Tommy understood immediately what had happened. Someone wanted to silence this man. Someone had beaten him and tied him to a tree, probably planning to come back and finish the job. Most people would have run. Most people would have called the police from a distance and let other people handle it. But Tommy didn't own a phone. And more importantly, Tommy couldn't leave a human being tied to a tree, suffering and bleeding. He made a decision. Make viewers emotionally invested. "I'm going to cut you down," Tommy said calmly. "No," the man said urgently. "Kid, you don't understand. They'll come back. They might come back soon. They'll hurt you. They'll kill you. You need to run. You need to get away from here." "What's your name?" Tommy asked, already pulling out his hunting knife. "Marcus," the man said. "Marcus Webb." "Kid, I'm serious. You need to." "Marcus, I'm going to cut you down," Tommy repeated. "Then we're going to get you to safety." Tommy started working on the ropes. They were thick and tight, and whoever had tied them had known what they were doing. It took Tommy almost 10 minutes to cut through all the bindings. When the last rope fell away, Marcus tried to stand but couldn't. His legs had lost circulation from being bound. His left arm was definitely broken. Tommy supported him, letting Marcus lean on his shoulder. "Can you walk?" Tommy asked. "Yeah, I think so," Marcus said. "But not far. Where do we go?" Tommy was thinking. He was 17 years old. He'd never been in a situation like this. But he knew the mountains. He knew how to survive. He knew how to think. He couldn't take Marcus to the town. The Hell's Angels would look for him there. He couldn't take him to the cabin. That would be the first place they'd search. He needed somewhere isolated, somewhere safe, somewhere that only he knew about. "Come on," Tommy said. "I know a place." Over the next 3 hours, Tommy helped Marcus up a steep mountain trail. Marcus was suffering, moving slowly, clearly in pain. They stopped frequently so he could rest. Tommy gave Marcus water from his canteen. He gave Marcus some of the jerky he'd packed for his hunting trip. He supported Marcus's broken arm in a makeshift sling made from his jacket. They eventually reached a cave that Tommy had discovered years ago while exploring. It was hidden behind a waterfall and was practically invisible unless you knew where to look. Inside the cave, Tommy laid Marcus on a flat area. He went back out and gathered supplies from the forest. He used his hunting knife and some paracord to create bandages from branches and fabric. He set Marcus's arm in a more stable position. He started a small fire using dry, what he'd stored in the cave from a previous visit. "Why are you doing this?" Marcus asked, watching Tommy work. Because you need help. Tommy said simply. I'm a Hell's Angel, Marcus said. I'm part of a group that hurts people. I've done bad things. I have a criminal record. Why would you help me? Tommy thought about what his grandfather had taught him. My grandfather says people are like animals, Tommy said. When they're hurt or scared, they sometimes do bad things. But that doesn't mean they're bad forever. That means they need help healing. Marcus stared at the 17-year-old boy who'd risked his life to save someone he didn't know. What's your name, kid? Marcus asked. Tommy, he said. Tommy Mackenzie. Well, Tommy Mackenzie, Marcus said. I think you're either the bravest or the stupidest kid I've ever met. Maybe both. My grandfather raised me in the mountains, Tommy said. He taught me to survive. He taught me that human life matters. He taught me to trust my instincts. Over the next 3 days, Tommy made multiple trips down the mountain and back to the cave. He brought food. He brought water. He found some basic medical supplies in his grandfather's cabin without explaining to Samuel what they were for. His grandfather had learned long ago that Tommy needed his privacy, and he trusted Tommy. Marcus slowly got better. His arm stopped throbbing so badly. His cuts started healing. He began to eat more. He began to talk. He told Tommy about why he decided to leave the Hells Angels. Marcus was 53 years old. He joined the gang when he was young. Just a stupid kid looking for belonging, he said. Over the years, he'd gotten in deeper and deeper. He'd been part of drug operations. He'd been part of criminal enterprises. He'd hurt people, but he'd also seen things that bothered him. He'd seen young kids getting recruited into drug dealing. He'd seen women being mistreated. He'd seen good people being destroyed by the gang's activities. A few years ago, he'd met a woman who had a son. The woman had asked Marcus to leave the gang, to get clean, to build a better life. For a while, Marcus had tried. He'd stopped going to clubhouse meetings. He'd stopped participating in gang activities. But leadership didn't work that way. You didn't just leave a gang like it was a club you didn't want to be in anymore. When they found out Marcus was planning to cooperate with the police, they decided to make an example of him. If they catch me talking to the cops, they'll kill me, Marcus told Tommy. And they'll probably kill the woman and her son too, just to make a point. Tommy understood the gravity of the situation. Then we need to get you to the police, Tommy said. It's not that simple, Marcus said. The police chief is kind of in their pocket. Not directly. He won't take money from them. But they've got him so scared that he doesn't do his job. My grandfather knows the police chief, Tommy said. My grandfather was in the military. Chief Henderson respects him. Your grandfather knows about you helping me? Marcus asked. Not yet, Tommy said. But I think it's time to tell him. Karma or the big reveal? That evening, Tommy went to the cabin and talked to his grandfather for the first time about Marcus. Samuel Mackenzie listened carefully, without interrupting. He was 84 years old, and his face was weathered by decades of mountain living. His eyes were clear and sharp. When Tommy finished telling him the story, Samuel was silent for a long moment. You did something very brave, Samuel finally said, and very foolish, and very right. So you're not mad? Tommy asked. I'm not mad, Samuel said. I'm proud. I taught you to trust your instincts, and you did. I taught you that human life matters, and you believe that. I'm proud of you, Tommy. Samuel picked up his old satellite phone, something he kept for emergencies, and called Police Chief Roy Henderson. Roy, Samuel said when the chief picked up. This is Samuel Mackenzie. I need to meet with you, in private, at my cabin. It's important. Chief Henderson arrived an hour later. He was a big man in his early 60s, with kind eyes that had seen too much suffering. When he walked into the cabin and saw Samuel, he immediately understood that this was serious. Samuel told him about Marcus. If what this man knows is true, Samuel said, then you need to protect him. You need to get him into federal custody where the Hells Angels can't touch him. And you need to use his testimony to clean out your department and take down this gang. Samuel, Chief Henderson said wearily, I know what's happening. I've always known. But these people are too powerful. I've got limited resources. They've got unlimited resources and no regard for human life. Yes, Samuel said, which is exactly why you need to fight them. Not with more violence, but with the law, with documentation, with testimony from someone inside the organization. Samuel paused. I raised Tommy to believe that doing the right thing matters, Samuel continued. That's exactly what he did. Now it's your turn, Roy. Now it's time for you to do what you swore to do when you became a police officer. Now it's time to protect your town. Chief Henderson was quiet for a long time. If I do this, he said, people's lives are going to change. Innocent people might get hurt if the gang retaliates. People's lives are already being destroyed, Samuel said quietly. The only question is whether you're going to let it keep happening or whether you're going to stop it. Chief Henderson made his decision. With Samuel's help, he went to the cave and met Marcus. They arranged for Marcus to be transported safely to a federal facility where he would be protected under a witness protection program. But before Marcus left, he asked to meet with Tommy one more time. I want you to know something, Marcus said to Tommy. My whole life, I thought people were either strong or weak, either winners or losers. I thought that showing compassion was weakness. He looked at the 17-year-old boy who'd risked everything to help him. But you showed me something different, Marcus continued. You showed me that the strongest thing a person can do is help someone else when they're suffering. You showed me that real strength comes from choosing to do what's right even when it's scary. My grandfather taught me that, Tommy said. Well, your grandfather's a wise man, Marcus said, and you're going to do important things with your life, Tommy. I can feel it. With Marcus's cooperation and testimony, things moved quickly. Federal agents arrived in Silvermont. They began an investigation into the Hells Angels operations in the area. They had Marcus's testimony about criminal activities, about drug trafficking, about violence and intimidation. Within 2 months, 17 members of the Hells Angels had been arrested. The clubhouse was raided and closed down. Evidence of criminal activities spanning years was discovered. The police department itself was investigated, and while Chief Henderson was cleared of wrongdoing, 3 officers were arrested for taking bribes from gang members. The town of Silvermont was in shock. The Hells Angels had seemed so untouchable, so powerful. But what had made them untouchable was not actually their power. It was the silence of the people around them. It was fear. It was a belief that nothing could be done. But one teenage boy had refused to accept that. One teenage boy had decided that compassion mattered more than fear. And that decision had changed everything. The moral takeaway. 1 year after Marcus was taken into federal protection, Tommy received a letter. It was from Marcus. He was living in a new town under a new name. He'd enrolled in community college. He was working as a counselor at a youth center, helping at-risk kids avoid getting involved with gangs. I built a new life, Marcus wrote. A real life, a good life, and I owe it all to you. That day when you cut me down from that tree, you didn't just save my body, you saved my soul. You gave me a reason to believe that redemption was possible. Tommy kept that letter on the wall of his room in his grandfather's cabin. A few months later, Tommy made a decision that shocked his grandfather. I want to go to college, Tommy told Samuel. I want to study criminal justice. I want to help other people the way I helped Marcus. I want to use my education to make communities safer. Samuel smiled. I think that's exactly what you should do, he said. Tommy graduated from the community college with honors. He went on to a 4-year university. He eventually became a detective with the Colorado State Police. He never left his home state, and he always made sure to visit his grandfather. He never forgot the lessons he'd learned in that cabin. That human life matters, that compassion can be more powerful than fear, that doing the right thing is worth it even when it's hard. But the most important outcome of this story happened in Silvermont itself. Once the Hells Angels were gone, something shifted in the town's culture. People started speaking up about other problems that had been ignored, domestic violence that had been hidden, corruption in local government, environmental issues. The silence broke, and once it broke, change became possible. Chief Henderson, emboldened by the success of taking down the gang, implemented new training programs for his officers. He focused on community policing. He built trust between the police and the community. Silvermont became known as a town where justice was possible, where the police actually protected the people. The lesson asterisk. This story teaches us something critical about fear, silence, and courage. First, it teaches us about how silence enables evil. The Hells Angels had controlled Silvermont not because they actually had that much power, but because everyone believed they were too powerful to challenge. The silence of the townspeople, born from fear, had given the gang the space to operate. This is true in so many situations. Bullies thrive on silence. Abusers thrive on silence. Criminals thrive on silence. Corrupt systems thrive on silence. The people being harmed don't speak up because they're afraid. People who aren't being harmed directly don't speak up because they think it's not their problem. And as the silence grows, the abuse grows. But what this story shows us is that silence is a choice. Fear is a choice. We can choose differently. Second, this story teaches us about the power of one person's courage to inspire others. Tommy didn't have any special training. He didn't have any special authority. He was just a 17-year-old boy who decided to do the right thing. But his courage inspired Chief Henderson to do his job. His courage inspired Marcus to finally break free from the gang. His courage inspired the entire town to start speaking up about the things they'd been silent about. One person's willingness to do the right thing can create a cascade effect. Other people look at that courage and think, if they can do it, maybe I can do it too. This is how movements start. This is how change happens. Not through grand gestures or powerful institutions, but through ordinary people doing extraordinary things. Third, this story teaches us about compassion for people who've done bad things. Marcus was a criminal. Marcus had been part of an organization that hurt people. He was not an innocent person. But Tommy showed him compassion anyway. Tommy saw that Marcus was suffering and that he was trying to change. Tommy treated him like a human being worthy of help. This doesn't mean we should excuse bad behavior. This doesn't mean we should let criminals avoid consequences for their actions. But it does mean we should recognize that people can change. That redemption is possible. That showing kindness to someone who's trying to do better is not weak. It's powerful. Marcus changed his entire life because one teenager showed him that he was worth saving. Fourth, this story teaches us about the danger of blind authority and the importance of critical thinking. The police chief was afraid of the Hells Angels. The townspeople were afraid of the Hells Angels. They'd accepted that there was nothing they could do. But a teenage boy who'd never been trained in law enforcement looked at the same situation and saw something different. He saw that Marcus's life could be saved. He saw that getting the right person to the right authorities could change everything. Tommy could see what the adults couldn't because he wasn't trapped by their fear. He didn't accept the limits that they'd accepted. He trusted his own judgment. This is an important lesson. Sometimes the people in authority are too close to the problem to see solutions. Sometimes we need fresh perspectives. Sometimes we need to trust our own judgment about what's right, rather than accepting what we've been told is possible. The most important lesson, asterisk. Doing the right thing matters, even when the outcome is uncertain. Tommy didn't cut Marcus down because he knew for sure that it would lead to the gang being busted. He didn't know that. He cut Marcus down because Marcus was suffering and it was the right thing to do. He didn't tell Chief Henderson about Marcus because he had a master plan. He did it because he believed that justice mattered and that someone in authority should know what was happening. In our world, we often don't take action because we're not certain of the outcome. We wait for guarantee that our efforts will work. We wait for someone else to do something first. But change doesn't work that way. Change requires people to act even when the outcome is uncertain. Change requires people to do what they believe is right and trust that it will matter. Tommy's grandfather taught him that human life matters. Tommy believed it. And because he believed it, he acted on it. And because he acted on it, a town was freed from the grip of organized crime. Here's what this means for you, asterisk. Don't stay silent when you see injustice. Don't accept the limits that fear tries to put on you. Trust your instincts. Do what you believe is right. You might not know how it will turn out. You might be scared. You might think that your actions don't matter. but they do. Your choice to speak up might inspire someone else to speak up. Your choice to act might encourage someone else to act. Your choice to do what's right might trigger a cascade of change. You have more power than you know. Use it. Please use it. Closing call to action. I hope you felt the truth in this story. I hope you saw yourself in Tommy, in his courage, his compassion, his willingness to do what's right even when it's scary. If the story of a mountain boy who changed his entire town moved your heart, please hit that like button right now. Your support helps us share these powerful stories with people who need to hear them. And please subscribe to this channel. Subscribe because you believe that ordinary people can do extraordinary things. Subscribe because you want to be part of a community that celebrates courage and justice. Subscribe because you want to hear more stories about real people changing the world. Now I want you to comment below. Have you ever seen injustice and felt too afraid to speak up? Have you ever been surprised by someone's courage? Have you ever done something hard because you believed it was right? Your story matters. Your comment matters. And it might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. Here's what I want you to do, asterisk. First, if you're aware of criminal activity, abuse, or injustice happening in your community, report it. Call the police. Contact the FBI. Reach out to advocacy organizations. Don't stay silent because you're afraid. Your report might be the piece of the puzzle that law enforcement needs to stop a crime. Second, support the people in your life who show courage. Celebrate them. Tell them they did the right thing. Help create a culture where speaking up is seen as brave, not foolish. Third, question the limits that fear tries to put on you. Ask yourself, is this really impossible, or have I just accepted that it is? Is this really too dangerous, or have I just been told it is? What would I do if I had the courage of a 17-year-old boy? Also, share this video with your family and friends. Share it with people who need to remember that courage matters. Share it with people who need to know that one person can change everything. Share it with people who need hope. The algorithm helps us reach more people when you engage with this video. So please, like, comment, subscribe, and share. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for caring about these stories. Thank you for believing that justice is possible and that ordinary people can create it. I'll see you in the next video, where we celebrate more stories of real people standing up against injustice and creating change in this world. God bless you all. Folded hands. The end.